good afternoon from Pioneer Plaza. This is Think Tech Hawaii. I'm not Ted Ralston, and this is Where the Drone Leads this week. I wanted to introduce to you a few great cinematographers that are working here in the drone industry in Hawaii and trying to bring this technology to TV, commercial, and movie use in Hawaii as it becomes an ever-expanding technology. And we thought this was a very relevant topic for this state, as it's one of those key aspects of economic development and growth in the Hawaiian Islands. So I'd like to start with Jonah Shaul, and if you could introduce yourself and your company.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. My name is Jonah Shaul. My company is NewSkye Perspectives, and we do aerial cinematography, and I'm a licensed pilot, a former Black Hawk pilot with the U.S. Army, and started my company about a year ago.
Okay. And to his left is George Russell. Would you like to introduce yourself and a little bit about your company, your
Thank
business?
you. Thanks, Mike. My name is George Russell, and I'm co-owner-operator of High Vantage. It's a relatively new company, but I've been in the business as a videographer, assistant director, producer, mostly for international productions, Japanese and local productions as well. And I just totally jumped on the drone train here because it's budding technology, and it offers a new vantage, hence High Vantage, to offer producers to showcase our beautiful state.
Oh, definitely. So one of the things we've seen, I think, over the past few years is that the drone technology and putting some cameras in the air to be able to utilize them to get some really unique shots, and then the ever-increasing ability to manage and control a lot of that from the ground for the producer, the directors, the cinematography staff, and then also, like I said, for the pilots to get some of these shots. So would you guys like to, George, some of the technology, how it's enhanced your business and how it's actually been able to bring in new perspective, obviously, to some of the products you've been able to develop?
Sure. Well, High Vantage and NewSkye Perspectives and other companies like yours as well, we try to offer the producer like I said, a different vantage point to tell a story. And it's very important. I hired Jonah as well because he is a licensed FAA pilot, and the current rules are you have to have a licensed pilot at your pilot controls on the stick, so to speak. So basically, I keep telling him, and we remind each other as well when we're out there on location, we have to tell a story. You know, we're not shooting a construction site per se, or agricultural field, or going from point A to point B to do mapping, which I'm sure you can talk about more. But it's all about telling story. How do we enhance the scene that our director has in his or her head and bring it out to fruition? And it's always a great challenge to show that. But with that challenge comes a lot of responsibility, which I'm sure we'll talk about in a little bit. So it's basically enhancing the story.
So for yourself, Jonah, I mean, how is some technology, like we've got, Inspire One sitting on the table here, how has that really been able to enhance your ability to do this job, merge with a person like George when you're out shooting? What are some of those advantages that you've seen on set when you've been working with different people?
Well, I think maybe one of the biggest things that the drones do for cinematography, at least, is it bridges that gap between a lens on the ground and what you're capable of doing with that, and then a lens in a helicopter. And there's always been this big gap because you can only get so close and you can only do so much with the helicopter, and you can only go so high or move in such a way with the lens on the ground. And the drone really kind of just merges the two and fills that gap completely. I mean, you can come in relatively tight, with the option on some of the drones like the Inspire One Pro to put a little bit longer lens on there to make it look like you're closer without really getting close enough to be dangerous. And then be able to seamlessly in one shot just pull out and do like a wide aerial view of something.
So recently too, you were hired doing World Surf League, and you're getting ready to head off to Fiji, also doing some more work for them. So Volcom Pipeline Pro, and working up there in the North Shore flying, and you were doing live streaming from this drone. So they were able to take the video feed directly from the drone and put it out there on the web and TV, live TV. Seamlessly, basically, while you were flying and stuff. So yeah, another great advantage and stuff for the for using the drones. Another area that comes up quite frequently, is safety. And I know that, as all of us, having 333 exemptions and working within the rules, that safety is paramount in how we fly, but that using these is actually a much safer option sometimes than you were talking about a helicopter. A helicopter
Right.
just can't get certain shots because of how close you can get to the actors possibly. And there was a transition of certain rules that came from the helicopter flights in the closed set exemption for the closed set motion picture addendum to your exemptions and things too. So, how have you seen the enhancement of safety in using these also? What's another area that you've seen as you've gone out in different jobs?
Well, I think first and foremost, you're not putting actual people in the air, which is always a risk anytime you fly, whether it's a helicopter or an airplane or whatever. So you're taking that risk out of it. And then there's the risk of, like, if something goes wrong with a manned aircraft, a helicopter or an airplane, and it does go down, obviously the fuel on board, the people on board, thousands and thousands of pounds of metal, hitting the ground. The risk for something catastrophic is obviously much higher than something that weighs about 6 pounds and there's no, human life on board.
I think too, George, you've seen where the camera quality, the new X5 series, some of the drones that can carry, the Red series, Area Minis. I mean, these full movie cameras that a lot of cinematographers want to use when they're doing these productions can actually be carried airborne,
Right.
so that it allows them a seamless transition between film that's done on the ground and something that's in the air, so that the end user, does not notice a difference in quality and the format too.
Yeah. In fact, there was a Belgian company, I believe, called Flying Cam that I here, on even Skyfall or Spectre, some of the James Bond films, and they're single rotor, single rotor helicopters, if you will, that are maybe 7 foot, 8 foot rotor span, whereas this whole thing is 17 inches by 17 inches pretty much, and that camera makes the craft look really huge, but it's actually quite small in relationship to us. So, it's not. And it's white, she looks like an angel, it's not that menacing. So if you see this coming at you, on a film set, or you would hope that, there's a licensed pilot flying it. There's someone like me, a producer, that has the exemption form, the Section 333. We're approved by the FAA. It took me personally 6 months to get awarded that exemption. They have to scrutinize it. And now I think they're probably granted maybe close to 6,000 exemptions across the nation. When I got it, I was like almost number 4,000. So it's good to know, actually, the public should be relieved that there are, responsible people flying these drones out there. Now, that Flying Cam, deal with the single rotor, that carried a 35 millimeter motion picture camera in its red ball nose. But it can pretty much, it can hover, but it's mostly for forward motion type filming. What I love about these guys, they're VTOL, or vertical takeoff. They can take off, and literally their drift is maybe within, I don't know, like a foot or 2 feet in all directions. So you can get really precise, really safe with it. If the pilot feels that there's something wrong or something buggy going on, they can literally land it straight down.
Right. And there's a lot of smart and safe features in here too.
GPS
and that,
enabled.
I think we've seen with GPS. The return home capabilities, the ability to monitor everything that's going on with the aircraft from the app itself, from the signal strength, battery strength, that it's all right there for the end user and stuff. So it does provide a much safer platform when out operating. Not saying that it's a replacement for helicopters, but it gives an option, I think, to get some shots that people really want, either because of budget, or it's just there's a difficulty in trying to get a shot with a helicopter that maybe a drone flying along with a shot would be much more appropriate.
Absolutely.
So one of the things I think that all of us have been working towards is more of an integration here locally in the state of Hawaii, and trying to work with city, county here in Honolulu, state of Hawaii, and then the various islands. And I think when over the next hopefully weeks or months or so, we'll have some opportunities to sit down and talk with them some more, and maybe come up with a bit of a format by which we can introduce ourselves, have a package of information maybe that's on file, so that we can kind of simplify the approval process, and that we invite them out and maybe see how we operate and stuff. So that's one of the key aspects of any of these operations is safety and stuff. And Jonah, I mean, if you wanted to talk briefly about how we go about planning and executing an event, so it's not, people think we just show up and fly, but I think there's a lot more to it. And if you want to touch on that, it'd be great.
The first thing that happens is, somebody, the client contacts us and asks us, what can we do to support them at a certain event or whatever. And so then we just get the details. When is the event, first of all? Where is it? What kind of shots and everything? So there's that coordination that goes on, and we have to educate the client on the permit process if it's, if we're going to be filming and we need permits from the city and county or from the state. But then for our portion of it, we go out and we do a scout and we identify, okay, where's the best and safest place to take off from? What are the obstacles in the area? How high are they? We discussed a return home feature on the Inspire system, and you're able to, through the app, set the altitude that you want it to return home at if it needs to, if you lose link or if the battery gets too low. And so you go out and you do a scout and you find out what the obstacles are and which way you're going to be flying. And if the highest obstacle is 60 feet, you can set your return home altitude at 80 or 100 feet, to ensure that it clears that. And you just kind of see what's around and do kind of a risk identification, assessment, and mitigation process right there. And then you take that back to the client to make sure that everything's good to go, and hopefully you have your permit. And it's all about, like you said, just identifying a very safe and thorough way to go about doing the job.
And too, George, you've got your aircraft here, and you've got it numbered. You've got your N number on there. You've got your batteries numbered and stuff. And so unlike most hobbyists and stuff who probably have no idea how many hours are on a battery or how many flight hours are on their aircraft, when you are trying to operate commercially, that's one of those requirements you're trying to maintain, so that you have those records, those logs, for your aircraft and stuff that the FAA is asking of you. And it's a bit of a challenge, but there's it's important to provide that data to show that this is a safe technology for the industry. Vice, some of the things that we've seen in the past, we do know some people that do fly helicopters. Tim Lerma over on the Big Island, who has done that for TV and movie, and he has friends that have tragically died, flying because of the low altitudes, the high speeds. And stuff that has occurred in the past.
And it's usually not just the pilot that could get injured, obviously the crew as well. And I've been up on helicopters many times in my coordination business because I'm bilingual in Japanese. Everyone volunteers me, oh, George likes helicopters, have George fly it. And I love it. It's thrilling, obviously, to be in a helicopter, but I'm usually right there, passenger seat with the pilot, and I'm translating what the director, who has a monitor behind me, and the cameraman with either a joystick or he or she is holding the camera out of the window. Anything could go wrong. Like if a cap flies off or something flies out of the helicopter and gets in the back rotor blade, all havoc could, you could go down. So there's all those parameters that we have to be careful of in a helicopter.
All right, so we're going to come up on our first break here. We'll be back in just a minute.
Aloha and welcome to Think Tech Hawaii. I am Ina Chang. I am the guest host for Small Business Hawaii with Reg Baker. Tune in every Thursday at 2 p.m. and watch us. Aloha.
Aloha. My name is Richard Emery, host of Condo Insider. More than a third of Hawaii's population live in some form of association, and our show is all about educating board members and owners about their responsibilities and obligations and providing solutions for a great association. You can watch me live on Thursdays, 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. each week. Aloha.
Aloha, this is Maria Mera, and I'm here to invite you to my bilingual show, Viva Hawaii on Think Tech Hawaii, every other Monday at 3 p.m. We're here to inform, motivate, and entertain you. Join us. Hola, soy María Mera y estoy aquí para invitaros a mi show bilingüe Viva Hawaii en Think Tech Hawaii cada 2 lunes a las 3 de la tarde. Estamos aquí para informaros, motivaros y entreteneros. Apuntaros.
Hey, welcome back to Think Tech Hawaii here. This is Mike Elliott hosting for Ted Ralston, who's in the land down under this week. This week we're talking with Jonah Shaul and George Russell. and talking about drones and use in the TV and movie industry here in the state of Hawaii, and how this can actually be a real economic boon for the state, where they can reap some reward from some of the job opportunities that come from utilization of drones for a number of different projects. Like I said, TV, movie, commercial. Our next segment, we wanted to talk a little bit more about dealing with the state film offices and city, county, and then the various county film offices here in Hawaii as to some of the rules, regulations, process, and procedure out there. I know that there's some things that are posted on their website, you know, and yet we've had some conflicting emails back and forth when we've tried to do jobs. You know, production companies, you know, we've had also where various production companies have contacted us in a very short period of time, 2, maybe 3 weeks out if we're lucky, and trying to push through permitting. And that has been very, very difficult because we need a lot of details, and they want even more details when we're trying to use a drone. So, you know, I know, George, you've previously, prior to drones, have worked a lot, you know, with the film offices and stuff. So where do you see them with you know, their current understanding of some of the technology, and what are some of their issues and concerns that they're facing right now that we're helping or trying to address?
Yes. Well, fortunately, there's a lot of concerned drone operators that are having the Section 333. Then we call kind of hui together, and we try to educate the departments that are hungry for information. So I don't blame them. It's you go to the federal government, you know, website and look at all the regulations and, you know, what's the latest news on you know, lifting some regulations. It can be a very difficult, confusing process. So the city and state film offices, who I deal with all the time in terms of just getting location permits for standard, you know, camera and tripod type filming, this is a whole nother elevated, you know, process, pardon the pun, in that they have to deal with their risk management departments who in the past on some jobs have put the kibosh on some of our producers' requests for a drone usage. There are a few jobs, unfortunately, that were solely drone driven from Japan and the mainland.
Oh, and we had recently where we collectively had lost you know, significant income because they could not come to a collective decision on something that was exceeded the standards even set by the FAA. So
that is correct. And the city and county film office and the state film office feel for us. They understand our frustrations. They're frustrated. They empathize with us, but they say that their superiors or the divisions that they have to report to that also have to sign off on a permit.
Right.
You know, you have boating division, Department of Land and Natural Resources. You have DOCARE. You have Parks. All those departments that have to sign off on it.
Yeah.
Ironically, the FAA does not have to sign off on any of these.
Right.
And that's, I think, is where the current issue is right now. They think that the offices, higher-ups, want that extra endorsement of a hand stamp pass. George Russell, Jonah, Shaul, Mike Elliott, you guys are flying within our parameters. You know, but that therein lies the.
And I think we've seen where that's not what the FAA doesn't approve.
Yeah.
They come knocking on your door when something goes wrong, but they don't approve. And you know, they set the rules and the policies. They expect you to follow the rules and the policies. And when you don't follow the rules and the policies, that's when you end up dealing with the FAA. So I think we saw it recently where we were asked for, you know, where's your pre-approved FAA flight plan? Was one of the questions that came out, and I said, well, that's not what we're required to do. So we're getting, I think, sometimes asked for things that are in excess of what is required by the FAA for us to operate legally. So we're operating legally, but then we have these additional requirements that often are not written down anywhere that we're, and then we're on a very short timeline to begin with because we've been contacted oftentimes maybe 2 to 3 weeks. We could be a third party, you know, to a contract for an event. Somebody else contacts us because somebody contacted them, they need a drone, and we're under the gun. So, you know, trying to produce all this information, I think, on a short period of time is a challenge. I think collectively we've talked about too, wouldn't it be nice if you know, the film offices had a file for, you know, our individual companies, and if we went to them and said, oh yeah, they've got an exemption, they have the right amount of insurance, you know, they've flown with us before, we do a COI for a city, county, state that extends for an entire year instead of maybe event per event.
Right.
And that way, when these production companies come to them and they say, you know, I'm hiring NewSkye Perspectives, you know, hey, George Russell's shooting this for me, they just pull your stuff, good to go, stamp, approve. I think that would help simplify the process for us quite a bit, and for the film offices, once we're able to maybe help initiate that process for them.
An individual at a film office just told me this past week, you know, that they regret that they couldn't officially, even though we're well within our FAA parameters to fly legally, they just said that, so sorry, but there are other divisions that we have to answer to that haven't quite caught up with the technology or understanding of this technology for reasons that it's a very vast area. And sometimes it's almost easy to, we joke, but it's unfortunately true, it's sometimes easier to get a permit to fly a helicopter close to Waikiki than it is one of these things. And there's also bad stigma attached, unfortunately, because the people that are crashing drones into buildings or doing nefarious acts aren't necessarily people that have the Section 333, you know, unfortunately.
I think, and it's a 1%er. I mean, it's a very small percentage, and I think too, you've seen in the media where it's a slow news day. You know, find me a drone story. But it's a very, very small percentage of people. Most people that we know that hobbyists that are out there and stuff are flying safely. They want to do it the right way. They want to know what the rules are, and they do it in a very respectful manner and stuff. And they're just out shooting great shots of Hawaii and using them in the manner in which they were designed.
I think that. You know, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, there's some fear-based decision-making going on because, you know, there are people out there that are doing things they're not supposed to do, and then the judgment on them gets kind of applied to the drone industry as a whole. Like, could that happen, you know? And that comes down to, like, you know, what you said, the risk mitigation departments, you know, coming into play. But I think it's, you know, between the FAA and the drone companies, you know, those of us who hold the Section 333 exemption, and the state and city and county film offices, you know, all three entities, they want to see the industry succeed. So I think the important thing here is that, you know, we have to find a way, like you said, to make the process a little more efficient and easier for everybody. But to do that, I think one of the important things is just creating an understanding. There has to be like a way that as the regulations change, well, a way for them first to understand the current regulations and to have a better understanding from their perspective, because that's what we need to do. We need to look at the situation from the FAA's perspective. We need to look at it from the state and city and county film office perspective, and
from the public's perspective.
And the public, absolutely. And then, you know, when we have the FAA, whose regulations, you know, the FAR AIM, I've dealt with for many years, and they like to say that things are black and white, but, you know, we've had professional discussions over, you know, well, does this mean when I'm doing this, does this apply or does it not? And you go into the weeds, and it's, you know, it's written by lawyers and stuff, and it can be very kind of dense. And then to expect, you know, the state and the city and county film offices and people there who aren't familiar with the FAA.
So, recently they latched on to that, you know, 500 feet. You must be 500 feet away, you know, from everybody that's non-participant. And, you know, in talking to different folks that are dealing with the VSDO offices back on the mainland that have 333 exemptions, you know, it kind of varies. You know, it's like, well, yeah, we don't want you flying in somebody's face, but at the same time, we understand you have to take off and land. So if people provide adequate safeguards to take off and land, you know, they barricade, they have people watching the area, you know, and they've been able to do that when it was maybe a little bit closer. The other option is doing a complete closed set. You know, in a closed set, basically, you know, that you're there and you basically sign off saying that I understand a drone is going to be used and that nobody from the outside can come in and enter. So there's, you know, and then, but some people have a different interpretation of what closed set means, and I think there is a very clear definition of, you're not supposed to be there. If you're not part of the crew, or you're not one of the actors that's being involved in the event, you're not allowed to be there, and that area is blocked off for use, and that you can fly closer than 500 feet. Those rules are actually going to be changing this summer. There's going to be various graduated classes of distance based on the weight and I guess a hazard to personnel based on the different weights of some of the different drones, so that you will be able to fly a lot closer. And that's going to be a graduated element that will come with some additional 333s that are issued, and then maybe retroed back to everybody else that has theirs in hand. So we should see that here shortly too, and that'll help mitigate some of that.
Right.
Because that 500 feet, it came from the helicopter use. It was kind of dragged over from helicopters, and that's where that number comes from.
Yeah,
Right.
explain why 500 feet. I know you told me this yesterday. Why is it the 500 feet? Is because helicopters have a need, when they take off, they kind of lurch in a certain direction?
No, I mean, a helicopter can come straight up if necessary, but I think, you know, helicopters obviously have been doing aerial cinematography and stuff for decades, and I think they just determined that the closest that is safe, you know, for a helicopter to get to people and stuff, you know, when they're flying is 500 feet. It's, again, thousands of pounds of, you know, moving metal and people and gasoline and
Beating
stuff.
the air into submission. Yeah,
Right,
so-
yeah. So I think that they just determined 500 feet was the
Yeah.
minimum safe distance. So what Mike was saying is that when they created the Section 333 regulations, they just said, okay, so what should we say is the minimum safe distance? And it seems as though they just said, well, it's 500 feet for helicopters, so let's just make it the same for drones.
Yeah.
And, you know, I don't know what all went into the decision making, but obviously even people at the city and county and at the state film office, you know, when they come out and they see, you know, this thing flying around, I think everybody agrees that 500 feet is pretty excessive. You know, many things could go wrong, and 500 feet away for this little guy is like light years.
I mean,
you know?
you've seen me on shoots. I put up little orange cones, like at least a 25-foot
Right.
circumference around her,
Yeah.
so she can take off and land. Her name is Beulah, by the way, apparently. So she can take off and land within a 25-foot radius. And if something, you know, when you take it off and when I take it off, we inspect it to see, okay, the props aren't wobbling, it's not jittering, you know, we go forward, back, left, right,
Right.
and if it responds appropriately, then we can take off.
Right.
So we do a full complete systems check before
Correct.
we go anywhere, because it comes a couple feet off the ground. We check across the board to make sure all the connections, battery, you know, we check all those, and then, like I said, a quick movement check, make sure it's responding properly, you know, before heading out. So yeah, there's quite a bit that goes into that, and then having visual observers on site. And sometimes we have multiple people, you know, to assist, like I said, coning off. You know, we've gone so far as to get, nice safety vests with written on there. I've got, caution tape that we can run, cones, you know, as much as we can possibly put out there, more probably than is required.
Yeah.
But yeah, just as a, added precaution and stuff.
And we're required on a closed set or any set for the PIC, the pilot in charge, to give a safety briefing to everyone.
Yeah.
So, and everyone, the ADs gather everyone together and say, okay, listen up, very important. Pilot's going to talk about the safety and what to do in case something goes wrong.
Right.
We even have prop guards for this guy. So if we do need to fly in a closed set situation within 500 feet of all participating actors and crew, there is the option of a prop guard. And sometimes the producers could require that. So that none of these blades would be hitting someone. I mean, these are carbon fiber. They can slice you up. I don't know if they can kill you, but having a prop guard on here would definitely mitigate. And of course, there's a smaller Phantom, which is more square. That's what, 5 pounds or something.
So yeah, we're going to get ready to wrap up here on this segment, and
sorry.
we'll come back here with Jonah Shaul and George Russell. And just talking about TV, movie production here with drones here in the state of Hawaii.
Aloha, I'm Keli'i Akina with the Grassroots Institute of Hawaii, and one of our delights is to be partnered with Think Tech Hawaii and produce programs every week. Every Monday at 2 o'clock, we have a show called E Hana Kako, which means let's work together. So we bring people from all across the nation and the country, and certainly throughout the islands, together here to talk with them about how to work together, and how to work together to do the following: to build a better economy, a better government, a better society. So if you're interested in the research of our think tank, the Grassroots Institute, or if you're interested in how that's applied at the governmental and community and business levels, you'll enjoy the fascinating conversations with our guests on E Hana Kako every week on Think Tech Hawaii at 2 o'clock on Mondays. Until our next show, I'll see you. Aloha.
Hey, welcome back to our final segment here for Think Tech Hawaii, Where the Drone Leads, Pioneer Plaza. I'm here with Jonah Shaul and George Russell. We're talking about the use of drones in TV and movie here in the state of Hawaii. And in our last segment, we wanted to talk a little bit about where the future is going with this technology and some of the new technology that is right on the horizon that's just being released. You know, some announcements here recently with DJI and their new M600 and some of the excitement. I know that's, you know, once again, we're throwing more terms out there and stuff, but there's new craft coming out all the time. The technology is really exploding, and it's actually making it simpler, safer, and a more productive tool, I think, too, for directors when they're out there on set. So, Jonah, what are your first impressions on, like I said, the new M600? What do you think about it for cinematography use?
I think it's so far pretty impressive. You know, DJI, not only did they come out with a system that can carry like a Red series camera, which has made movies like I believe Lord of the Rings series and the Book of Eli.
6-pound camera.
It's a 6-pound camera. It's a full sensor, and it's a very, very high-end camera. So they came up with a system and a gimbal that can carry that, so you have that option. But just recently released the X5 camera, which is only slightly larger than this one here, and that's capable of shooting 4K RAW, you know, which steps up the level that you can shoot and the quality you can shoot with just a tiny little drone, you know, like something like this, as opposed to like, you know, the M600, which is larger, and just really bump it up. And if you use that new X5 RAW camera on the M600, you can get 35 minutes of flight time, which is amazing.
And you can fill up an entire 512 gigabyte memory stick that comes with these things. So shooting in raw video, that's what a lot of production companies, that's what they're looking for, because it gives them a wider palette, I guess you could say, to edit. And George, you do a lot of post-processing and stuff. So would you want to maybe talk about that as to what some of these new technologies add for the you know, for the post-production team, what they can do with some of these things?
Yeah, so, I mean, we have cell phones now that shoot in 4K, you know, quite amazing, right? And this camera, the X3, which is DJI's first Inspire 1 camera that can do a full 360 and tilt up and tilt down, shoots 4K. But it's a highly compressed video image. So a lot of digital colorists and producers kind of frown at this, saying it's super compressed. We can't really, you know, deal with the footage in post-production. We can't adjust it to our liking to make it more cinematic or big scale motion picture friendly. With the X5 RAW cameras and these other RAW cameras, or cameras that are capable of shooting RAW, that's completely uncompressed. So it sees into the highlights, it reaches deep dark into the shadows, and to a producer or cinematographer, that's a huge gain for this industry, for their types of shots. So they're no longer regulated to having these big cameras on a tripod on the ground. They can take a 6-pound, obviously this camera is just a few ounces, but a whole 6.5 pound carrying multiple lenses, you know, choices up there into the sky. And of course it requires maybe 8 rotors. So you're dealing with a larger platform. In those situations, I would assume you're flying with a closed set type scenario.
Most definitely.
And the camera companies too, on the other side of the spectrum, the camera companies are creating smaller and lighter weight cameras, knowing that there's this huge demand for that in the drone industry. So Red and Arri Alexa have cameras that are lightweight, and they're making them even lighter. And you know, the Red Weapon, I believe, the Red Raven is a very lightweight camera.
The Weapon is 8K capable, and the Raven is just about 3K capable to actually 5K. You know,
So that was the thing too when the X5, a lot larger DJI X5 camera came out and stuff. You know, one of the things people talked about was, it looks like a DLSR with everything that a person holds on to stripped off of it. And it kind of is, because all those features, once again, you know, are built into the app that allow the camera operator, who is directly connected with the pilot, to manipulate that camera in flight completely, every aspect of that camera as if it was in your hand. So, you know, the advantage of being able to reshoot something while you're still in the air, hey, let's go back and fix that. Didn't quite get that shot, let's get the roll rate of the camera's not right, you know, and you can go back and fly these, you know, again and again sometimes, and at low cost. So, you know, some of this technology, like, so what it's offering a production team is a lower cost option. it's a safer option, and it's very, very environmentally friendly option because you're using batteries. We're not polluting the environment. We're just using batteries. Come back, put these things back on charge, get this thing back in the air.
Yeah, and the thing with the batteries, that technology has really come along quite a bit. Before you had these batteries, lipos that could explode. I mean, these you shouldn't try to toss around either or drop, but these are intelligent batteries that DJI sends what do you call it, upgrade, over the internet for actual safety, precautions and things like that. So it's a safer battery. It's an intelligent battery, and I roll with maybe 10 or 11 batteries for any given day of shooting.
So that's another thing too. The one of the limitations you have right now, even though the technology is moving along, is flight time.
Right.
Because we're still in this lithium polymer battery realm, which is a very powerful battery, and like I said, you can get 15 minutes or so out of a Inspire like this right here.
Depending on the wind conditions.
Yeah, depending on the wind. Yeah. But so there's some new technologies that are coming. We're talking to be seeing some hydrogen hybrid capability, aluminum ion capability, some different ones that are out there, and so where do you see that kind of crescendo of hey, I've got enough battery power, so on a single flight? I mean, where's that sweet spot, do you think, for you guys in operating?
I think the industry, obviously, I mean, batteries are the big thing right now. I think that's going to be the next big,
smaller,
really
longer
big,
lasting.
Exactly. That's going to be the next big breakthrough in drone technology is the batteries, and they're pushing hard in all different directions to find something. But I think I think what they're shooting for is an hour. If you can get an hour on a battery, I mean, to be honest, I would be happy. 30 to 45 minutes is a lot of time. But
it's a lot of stress on the pilot to be flying for a full hour.
Well, like when Eric Sturman and Eric Sturman is somebody who saw the potential of the drones in the surf community. He lives on the North Shore, and and so when we go out and shoot these surf competitions. We're flying sometimes nonstop. We land just long enough to put a new battery in there, clean the lens, get it, and we're back up and at it. And it would save, landing and taking off is some of the riskiest parts of flying. And if we had batteries that would last longer and we didn't have to swap them so much, we'd catch more of the action, we'd land and take off less often.
So, definitely that's one of those things. And I think after they had shot a lot of surf competition and stuff, there was a discussion of, well, what if you had two drones out there where you had one that was low, shooting the action, the other would follow in maybe about 7 minutes later, and you kind of maybe get on some kind of cycle. Right. So whoever's high shooting B-roll, catching everything from above, the guy down low is catching the surfers. He has to come off station, swap battery, the guy high comes low, and you just have this continuous coordination of flight. But that's a limitation of the battery technology right now. Yeah.
You touched on something interesting. With asking about the future, where I see the future of this too is, I'm always interested in the safety in the camera platforms as well. What's the best resolution that I can squeeze out of these sensors, for the producers that are demanding for better post-production, shot manipulation. I see 360-degree virtual reality type applications for these, where this guy will carry a ball of 5 or 6, an array of 5 or 6, like GoPro type sensor cameras, where the viewer can put on these goggles and look everywhere, flying over beautiful scenery, or
they actually have that.
They do have that, correct. And I see it proliferating, hopefully, in the future. And I think, how about you? We're in such a great position in the future to really showcase our state on a whole new, different, exciting platform, such as virtual reality. That I really hope that these departments catch up to the policies and really, we're here to answer their questions. And
so at the end of the day, this comes down to revenue for the state and jobs for
exposure.
Local people. It really does. I mean, there's an entire group of people here in the islands that are standing by to work in this industry, to support us, whether they're pilots, whether they're working production team with drones, whether there are visual observers, sensor camera operators, support crew. That are out there just standing by, and like I said, there's revenue for the state, there's jobs, and that just benefits everybody and stuff. And a lot of production teams too, when we take some of these calls, I know that they don't want to bring the gear. because it's a burden for them to haul all that stuff out here and haul it all back, whether it's California or wherever they're going. If we're here local, we have the gear, we have the what they need, or we have the payload platform capability. It makes it an easier option for them to hire us here locally, and they save a tremendous amount of money. And like I said, it's perpetuating a brand new industry, here in this state where we can support TV, movie production. Maybe in the future shows like Hawaii Five-0. Maybe we can support some other movies that are shot out here, whether it's Kualoa Ranch or stuff over on Kauai or wherever it may be.
Right.
And they just pull more drone operations into this to get some of these pretty dramatic shots.
Yeah.
Well, thankfully, I recently heard back from the State Film Office. One of the things that we've been talking about is that sit down where we can sit down with the State Film Office, the city and county, and bring the FAA, so we have all three entities at the table, and we just have this kind of meeting of the minds, so to speak, and they definitely show interest in that, and I think that that's going to be the first big step forward to kind of coming up with this.
Also, another step forward would be to invite the legislature or people that have doubts about this industry to also, sit in and get in
the risk mitigation,
risk management,
or risk management, have them come and ask their questions.
I think we could easily show them how we've have operated extremely safe for quite some time, but they just didn't know that we were doing this.
It's easy
on
for
other
those
jobs that we've done. We've been doing this for quite a while. We've had our exemption since last year. We've flown a number of different projects. We do all the reporting. We file our NOTAMs with the FAA. We do all the things.
What's a NOTAM?
Yeah, notice to airman. Notice to airman, right?
What's that?
Yeah, that lets everybody know when and where you're flying and for your drone. But they, so we still do those for these small aircraft, and that's just for general aviation awareness. We're limited to 400 feet, but that is airspace, and anything that 1 inch above the ground on up, if we're flying, we have to file that. And it's just another safety aspect of commercial operations that we do to ensure that people are aware of where we're at, where we're operating, and that they can contact us. And part of having visual observers and everybody looking out for other aircraft, and also keeping an eye on our drone, where it's at, and what it's doing. So it's those are key elements of a safe operation. I think that's something that just needs to get translated over to the film offices and, like I said, folks in the legislature, where they see this as basically a revenue tool for the state, because as an industry, as we continue to grow, they can sit back. This is easy money for the state when we're paying taxes
and exposure.
And
in new technologies, where people are interested in the new technologies. Now, Mike, you've been really throwing us a lot of really cool bones, and we're being very generous. You do a lot of different types of filming beyond just motion picture and television. Tell us about some of the exciting projects that you and Jonah
a lot of mapping. There's obviously real estate's one of the things that's
What's
out.
mapping?
Mapping. Well, hey, so you can tell, you can sit there and take these things out, and you can pre-program a route to take images. You can stitch these together in various software to build some very high-resolution maps at a very low cost.
3D maps, right?
Three-dimensional maps and stuff. You can do this for buildings. You can do fly-around objects and actually put these into the computer, into software, and build a measurable, inspectable model. We were hoping to do a job over on Kauai where there's a tower that is too dangerous to climb. But it has all kinds of stuff hanging off it, and they wanted an inspection model of it. But we were going to fly concentric circles to the entire altitude of it, take all those images, put them in the computer, stitch them all together, and then allow the inspectors to actually visualize the tower without actually having to climb it. So, there's 1,000,001 uses for these things out here.
Agriculture?
Agriculture, different sensors that are available.
Helping to identify invasive species of trees without them having to tromp through the swamp and the wetlands to find them.
So we're getting ready to wrap up here today. I really want to thank Jonah Shaul coming out, George Russell, two great folks that are working in this industry here in the state of Hawaii. And I'm not Ted Ralston. This is Where the Drone Leads, Think Tech Hawaii. And I just want to thank you guys for appearing here today, and I really do appreciate it.
Thanks for having us, Paulo.